Welcome to the podcast She is Fab, where we discuss all things fab, women empowerment, and life coaching. My name is Evelyn, also known as the Fab Chieftess, and I am a mindset transformation coach. Welcome to another episode of the She is Fab podcast. My name is Evelyn, your host, mindset transformation coach. And today I have the pleasure of speaking to Onnie Michalsky. She is a mother of 6 who in the last 10 years has unlocked the power of self-care and has now made it her mission to empower other moms to rework their priorities to include themselves so that they too can transform the way they live. Welcome, Onnie.
Thanks, Evelyn. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. Oh, I love to hear that. So, Onnie, tell us more about you and this discovery that you made.
So, okay, like you said, I am a mom of 6, and our kids range from 21 down to 7. And so it was about 10 years ago, about 2011, so right after the birth of kid number 5, that we had made a huge move across the country. I'm originally from outside of Philadelphia, and we moved to Montana. And one of the reasons that was pushing us was we wanted to simplify our lives. Like, aside from traffic jams and all of the busyness of living near a city, my husband's from Montana. And so we wanted to kind of just step back, and Pennsylvania just got too big and too busy. And so that was one of the driving forces. There was other reasons too, but that was one of the big driving forces that we moved to Montana. And not that you had to move to a rural place to simplify and make time for self-care, but that was just part of our journey or whatever. And so we moved here, but we actually moved here and we ended up buying a hotel, and our life did not simplify. Like, it just became the same. Like, I brought all the busyness with me immediately. Like, I joined community clubs and got on the Chamber of Commerce, became the president of the Friends of the Pool. Like, we moved to this rural town, and I just took everything, like everything I was doing there, like it just kind of blew up here. And it was not simpler. It was just a lot of stuff, doing all of the things. We were also homeschooling. And so it was a bunch of things. And so in 2011, I remember I bought this little journal, and I was like, I'm going to start like tracking my food and doing all these things. It wasn't the first time that I was doing, like, you always take like that before picture and you do it like 100 times. And so like, this is going to be it. And I have done 100, but that time it really stuck. And I started, one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was teaching Zumba, because that was what I did. Like, I always like threw myself into everything. And I was teaching the class and like things that I never thought that I would ever do. But it just like got to be a lot. And so, so then I'm just going to kind of make a long story really short, even though it's already too long. I am a counselor. That's like, I got my master's and anything. And so I decided to go back to dive in, and we have to get I had to get 2,300 hours of counseling experience in order to get licensed. And there was a point in my life where I was like, okay, I have to do something. I forget, my youngest was like 3 or 4. And I'm like, so I've already like started, like I was already in 2011. That was when I had started doing, I had lost a lot of weight. I was tracking. I was like really started taking care of myself, and it stuck. And then after I had our youngest, so this is about 2017, I decided to go back to work. I was like, I either have to like blow up. Like, I was teaching dance. I was teaching little girls dance. I was teaching Zumba. I was getting certified as a weight management like coach and health coach and like all of this stuff. And I'm like, I have to do something. And my husband's like, why don't you do something that you went back to school for? Like, that you went to school for and everything. So I decided, I went from like one week being a total stay-at-home mom, like homeschooling, doing all these things, to a full-time working 9 to 5. It was a huge transition for my whole family. Like, I didn't expect, I thought I'd get my license like working a few hours here and there, like not really realizing it was a full-time job. And so then when I got certified, I got licensed as a therapist and everything, and I really dove into the health coaching thing. And I immediately went to weight loss coaching. But funny thing happened was I started gaining weight. And I'm like, the imposter syndrome, huge. Because I'm like, what do I do? Like, I could not get a control of my own weight. And I'm like, I can't coach people in this. But I'm like, but I have transformed. I have made like leaps and bounds in the past 10 years. And so what is it that allowed me to maybe not so much my like weight, but like what was it that allowed me to make these huge transformations? And it really was the fact I went back to 10 years ago when it all, like when I felt like I made that pivot. And it really was giving myself that permission to take care of myself, to not, even though I was doing all of the things, like to make that time for myself. Because before that, I never asked for help. I was so stubborn. Like people would offer to help. My mother-in-law wanted to take the kids and I was like, oh, no, I've got this. Like, and so being able to realize like that I was important, like I had to transform my beliefs in order to be able to make those physical changes. And it's not that I stopped believing that I was important and that's why I gained weight. Like it's not at all. It's just I kind of changed my focus because we can only focus on one thing. And so when I started focusing on my career and developing that, like I ended up, which is still self-development, I was still learning so much and like really growing as a person. And so that I had to separate that from like, it wasn't about my weight. It was about actually giving myself permission. And that was when my life really started changing, huge, like leaps and bounds.
You said a lot of good things there.
It was a long story. I need a drink of water.
No, please, I don't mind. I allow folks to take as long or as little as they need when they're telling us, some of their background. But you did touch on a couple of good points there. And this is especially the case with women and with women who are mothers, right? We're natural caregivers. And so we tend to prioritize others above ourselves, especially if you are a wife, if you are a mother, the needs of your children, come first. Maybe not your husband, maybe, a little bit, but your kids, right? Their needs come first. And like
boy,
you
are they
said,
needy.
Yes. I mean, I'm not a mother, but I have like a ton of nieces and nephews, and
So
I see it, and I'm like, I don't have kids just yet. But no, women always tell me, because as a mindset coach, I work with women across the board, kids, no kids. And one of the common things that I hear is that they don't have the time to put in that self-care, that genuine, authentic self-care. And a part of that is, like you said, giving yourself permission, giving yourself that importance, reprioritizing so you can care for yourself fully.
Absolutely. Yes. Because, that is the number one excuse. I hear it all the time is I don't have the time. But yet you have the time. Like if you felt that you believe that you were important enough to give yourself that time you would make the time. And so we end up not making the time for ourselves because of that deeper belief that we hold.
Yes. And you also said something else where you did not take the help that was offered, right? I feel like women try to be Superwoman or Wonder Woman. They want to do it all. They don't want to burden anyone else. But in doing that, you're actually stretching yourself thin. You're not prioritizing. You're not laying things out in a way that will give you the time to actually work on these other areas. So it's important that when the help is offered to really take it in, accept it, or even ask for help.
That's super hard for us. Speaking of super, like that is really hard for us to do as women because it takes a certain amount of vulnerability to admit that we could use the help, or even if we don't need the help, because we've already proven we can do it, but that we want the help. And that if we're willing to take that, then we can use that time that we save to do things that you're right. And you're also robbing that other person of that opportunity to serve and to give.
Yes. That's really
Yeah.
great. You're robbing them of the opportunity to serve and to give.
Right. People want to help. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a general, like it's just like a basic human. Most people, most people. I guess I shouldn't say all people, but most people are totally willing to help, and they just don't know what
Mm-hmm.
they need, what you need. And
Yes.
that's the thing. You have to identify what it is that you need. And one of the things I stress, like in my programs, is, and I just did a Facebook Live about this the other day, about leaning into your support system and identifying what you need. You can't expect somebody else to know what you need, even though, even with our husbands, we sometimes think they're mind readers and that they know. We want them to be mind readers sometimes so that you don't have to ask. But it's true. Like if you don't know what you need, you can't expect anyone
Mm-hmm.
else to know either. So you've got to
Oh
learn
my
how
goodness.
to, what it is that you need and how to communicate those needs.
Yes, I'm laughing because I had this same conversation on a live with two other coaches I had earlier today, and
Mhm.
we talked about the fact that people are not mind readers, right? If you don't express your wants and needs, there is
Nobody's gonna
no
know.
way that anyone's gonna know,
And
right?
then we get
And I feel
angry.
like,
We get
yeah,
mad because like, how come you don't know?
why don't you already understand what I need
Yep.
from you?
Yep. So true.
And that's, even more prevalent in relationships where, it's a love relationship with you and your partner, right? You expect
Hmm.
them to just know you, know everything about you.
Right.
And so
Right.
automatically pick up on that need. And it's not the
It's
case, nor
not.
is it fair to expect that.
Hmm. Totally agree.
Something else you touched on, imposter syndrome. You talked about this health journey that you went on, and you had several instances, but in this one instance, everything aligned, everything clicked, and it benefited you. But then you found yourself at a point where, because your focus was shifted to these other things, you weren't caring for yourself in the way that you should. And so,
Right.
even though you found this niche, right, that you wanted to go into, you felt like that you couldn't participate, you couldn't share your services or knowledge because you were not in control of that exact same thing you're trying to
Yes.
help others with.
Right, right. And I keep hearing like since I became a coach, like I feel like my this whole world opened up. It's amazing how much like I'm like, where have I been? Because it's just like this whole amazing world of different coaches and different like all of these entrepreneurs, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
loving it. Like that's one of the things that I have to continually balance because I'm like, okay, here I am on a Saturday afternoon recording this podcast. And I'm like, okay, this morning I was truly present with I left my laptop at the office. I went down to the river with my kids. Like, I'm like, well, one kid, that's all I wanted to go with me. But still, I was like, I have to really work on this work life balance thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like making
No
that
such thing.
there's not, no, but it's still something I strive for because I'm like, okay, I need to be fully
Mm-hmm.
present at work and fully present at home, and then I get more done rather than like half
Mm-hmm.
being half somewhere, half with them or whatever. So I need to be intentional, like, because I really love what I do. And so I'm like, okay, I need to get done what I need to do. I'm a list maker. I'm constantly like making lists. And like, I've been really working on like narrowing down that list. So it's not like 50 million things that I should do, but like the
Mm-hmm.
top 3 things for the day. And just working on that and using my time intentionally so that I can leave my laptop at work or I can just stay organized because I love what I'm doing. And it's so hard to
Mm-hmm.
just spend all of my time like creating content and getting on Clubhouse, this new, new social media that I'm like, I have to limit it. I have to put those
Mm-hmm.
limits on in order to do what I want to do. And because I'm loving
Yes.
this whole new adventure, this new chapter.
Well, that's positive because you love what you're doing, right? Which makes it a lot easier to develop content, to reach out to folks, to spread your message. I think it's a little harder for folks that may not have that fully, or where they have that burnout where it's just too much or overwhelming. But in your case, yes, you have to balance it somehow. And the word balance, for me, it's like, work life balance. It's not a thing. I think of it more as sustainability, right? How can you
Yes.
sustain these opposing forces, right? And especially when you have a family on top of that, you're an entrepreneur, you're a mom, you're a wife, and you're working with, clients. Like that is a lot to take in.
Right, right. And when it does get too stressful, when it does feel like out of balance, air quotes, like when it starts feeling like overwhelming, that's when I'm like, I need to practice what I preach. And I need to
Mm-hmm.
up the self-care, up like filling my bucket, because if it's becoming overwhelming, then I'm trying to do too much. And my
Mm-hmm.
Facebook group is like Women's Moms Without Capes, because it is taking off your superwoman cape and realizing
Yes.
that we don't have to do it all. We don't have to be it all. And we
Mm-hmm.
can still be amazing women. Like we can still take that time to nurture ourselves. And when life is becoming overwhelming, that's the number one sign. Like, okay, you need to fill your bucket. You don't need to do more for everyone else. You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
speed up. You need to slow down and
Mm-hmm.
fill your bucket by
I
practicing
love that
self-care.
name.
Yeah.
Moms Without Capes. Like that is the perfect, like the visual that I got, because like I told you earlier, we try to
Yes.
be Wonder Woman or Superwoman, especially, as
It's
a mother, right?
exhausting.
There's Yeah, I feel like, there's also the societal norms and the pressures, right? Where women
Mhm.
have to fit a particular mold based on, where they are in their life, right? If you're not married, you have to aspire to be married. If,
Right.
if you don't have kids, you have to aspire to have kids. Once you have your family, you have to be the perfect Susie homemaker. Like there's all these things, right? So I can
Expectations.
imagine, how that affects your psyche as well.
Right. It's those expectations that we place on ourselves and that society places on ourselves. And just like you don't know it's a problem, if you don't know it's a problem, you can't fix it. And so the number one thing is
Mm-hmm.
to identify what are those expectations that you hold. And
Mm-hmm.
we have those expectations as moms, like this is a good mom is dot, dot, dot. What
Mm-hmm.
complete that sentence and ask yourself, is that really true? Like there's plenty of, good moms that aren't cooking 3 meals a day or that aren't volunteering all around town. That doesn't make you a good mom. Like you have to redefine what you are in that
Hmm.
role and what that role is.
Oh my God. So I'm not a mother, but I will tell you that, well, unless you count my fur babies, which I think they
Yes.
count. But I have my own beliefs, and I kind of felt a little attacked with your last couple of comments because, for example, the cooking. I was brought up that as a woman, whether you are married or not, when you have a partner, you have to nurture the relationship and the home in some way. And that means part of it is cooking 3 meals a day.
Right.
And for the most
Right.
part, I fall into that. Like I actually
Mhm.
follow that. I do it. And when I don't, I feel like I'm not
You're
meeting the
less
need. I'm
than.
not filling the role. I'm less than. Yes,
Right.
right? But because I'm a coach, I have the tools and resources to address these things when they come up, right? And for those of you that
Right.
are listening or watching, the whole purpose of working with a coach is when you need that help, that guidance, that accountability to get through some of these, limiting beliefs or expectations or things that you grew up with, whether it's society or your ethnic group or what you learned in your home with your family dynamics.
Yes, those limiting beliefs are huge. And that is, remember how I mentioned how I went back and became a licensed therapist? Well, I really dove
Mm-hmm.
into the cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's where I was able to bring in, my training and what I learned about all of these core beliefs and changing our thoughts and our emotions and our behaviors. And I bring that into my coaching because
Mm-hmm.
that is, our beliefs are what are influencing and dictating everything we think, feel, and do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really
Mm-hmm.
need to uncover in that feeling of feeling inadequate, like
Mm-hmm.
not enough if you do not cook
Yes.
those 3 meals a day for your husband. But identifying
Yes.
like, is that true? Is that belief serving you? Is it, of course it's it's deepening your relationship with your husband and everything. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's just identifying and looking at those beliefs that you hold and seeing
Mm-hmm.
if that's really, if you weren't to cook those 3 meals for your husband, does that make you a bad wife? Like the inverse of a
Mm-hmm.
good wife. And really just kind of digging into
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. And not everyone has the awareness to do the work. Like, so sometimes you need the help of somebody
Yes.
else to guide you and walk you through it. Which is why, again, you have to understand the type of help that you need, right? So
Yeah.
say if it's some trauma that you're dealing with that is compounding those beliefs, right? You might receive better help from like a therapist, right? Or a psychologist
Right.
versus like a coach who can work on other types of issues. So understanding to the type of help that you need is key. And if you don't know, as you're starting these conversations, these professionals can actually help you and guide you in the right direction.
Right? It goes back to knowing your needs, knowing what you
Yes.
need based on your own experiences.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I've really
So
been, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Evelyn.
no, no. No, I wanted to ask because I want you to expand on your services and what you offer, right? So the field that you're in, maybe you have something that you're working on that's new, or if not, elaborate on your services and how you work with these women.
So my business is new, relatively new. Like once I entered the coaching world, I am just blown away by all of these amazing women, especially women who have been doing this for years. And so I am relatively new. In 2000 and let me think, 2019 was when I became a certified health coach. And that was also the same year that I got my license. So I'm like just licensed in Montana. For counseling, you have to be licensed in your state. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I decided to, I was working at the mental health center, like the community mental health center. I quit my job there, went online to BetterHelp to kind of make that bridge while I worked on like, I had no idea how to be a health coach, to be honest. Like, I had no idea. And so I worked with a business coach. And while it was really basic, like she was specific on health coaching, and
Mm-hmm.
so, but she taught me how to, create everything from like how to create a coaching package to what a Facebook pixel was. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
really just a kind of a basic course. And if anything else, like a lot of it I already knew, but a lot of it was also like brand new, and it helped me build that confidence. And I remember when I approached my husband, because we share finances and stuff, and I was like, I want to do this program, but it's like so expensive. He did not bat an eye. Like he was like, you're gonna do this. And later on, like when we talked to us, he's like, you didn't have the confidence. He's like, because 1 week into that program, I was like, oh, I can do this. Like, I could have done this. Like, I just did not have the confidence. And the more I like started talking with other coaches and other women, I was like, I can do it. Like, I've got this. And I built that confidence. So then I
Mm-hmm.
started my Facebook group, and that's where I show up all the time. I've got 700, I think today I got 753 members in my group. I love my group because that's where I show up. I have lots of posts. I batch my posts, of course, but I also show up like just organically whenever. Show up do Facebook lives, everything in my group. And then from that, do you know Amy Porterfield?
No.
Okay, so she does digital courses. So
Mm-hmm.
I took her digital course academy in the fall and created an online course. Launched in January. It was a flop. I have to admit, it was a flop. But I am relaunching again actually in May, the first week of May. I'm relaunching, and this is all about creating time. And that's what I said,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's the number one reason why we don't practice self care is because of time. And I've always been good at managing my time. And I created this 5-step framework that I myself use to be able to create more time in my day and get stuff done. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I teach in my course. So that's one of the services. Well, besides my group, so my free Facebook group, my course, and then in the meantime, between launching the first time, I was doing a presentation for my brother's church, and somebody approached me about doing, of all things, weight loss coaching, and I was like, I don't do that anymore. Like I don't do that. And she had no idea that I even did it before. But I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I bet you I can get a few other moms and let's do like some group coaching. So bam, I started a membership. So I opened the doors. I've got 5 members now for a membership. It's like 2 months old. And that's another way. So my doors to that close. They'll reopen in June. So by the time this podcast gets played or released, the doors to that will be open in June. So I've got different ways to serve. And my big way is in my Facebook group. That's where everything goes. I have a challenge coming up, and we'll be walking through the 5 pillars, like the physical, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and social pillars of self-care. So in all different ways. So,
That all
like I said, I love it. So I'm like, what else can I do? I've got to stay focused, keep my blinders on, because I have that tendency to want to do all of the things. And it's constantly reeling it back in and being like, okay, I got to practice what I preach. So this business is like helping me as much as helping everyone else. Cause I'm like, I've got to, make sure that I'm taking that time to continue filling my bucket and practicing that self-care, which I just booked a trip to Florida for that first week of May when I'm doing webinars from Florida, because that's my happy place, my beach. So I'm a little landlocked. It's the first vacation I'm taking by myself, but I'm like, I'm doing it.
Well, I have to say congratulations to you, because you have all these outlets that you're able to, be of service. You have the Facebook group where you show up, frequently. You have this course that you've developed. You have this group coaching that you also have available. And even like talking to you now, and those of you that are listening and not watching, the passion that you have for it is very transparent. It really, really easily communicates, even though we're not, in the same space.
Mm-hmm. Even with no makeup on. Hopefully you're listening and not watching. I did not know this was going to be video. I just want to let you all know that's watching.
She is in her natural beauty state. It is Saturday afternoon, guys. Yeah. We're recording this on April 10th, but this will be out at a much later date.
I do have to say, Evelyn was nice enough to say we could reconvene once I got my makeup on, but we did it anyway.
Hey, but that's okay, because we're all about women empowerment and embodying our strength, and that means embodying our natural state, sans makeup.
Yes. It's all good.
So something that is interesting about you as well, Onnie, is oh my God, Onnie. Why did I go to Connie?
I'm so used to getting my name butchered first and last.
So guys, before we started, I was like, how do I pronounce your name? And she said, oh, it's Onnie, like Connie. And that's why it kind of like got stuck in my head. But what I was saying, what I find interesting about you is that you're not just a coach. You actually have education. You're accredited as a coach, but you have additional education as a counselor, which actually gives you more power and more authority and ability to speak and help on certain subjects that a coach per se can't.
Right. I can dive into that mental health piece with confidence, knowing that I'm good. Like I get it. And like, I am accredited. You're right. Like I'm licensed here in Montana, but see, with the license, like I can't do counseling outside of Montana. And so that was a little tricky. When I started my business, I was like, oh, I can do coaching and counseling, but then legally that was not, like, I had to dive into the laws and be like, no, like it got too sticky. Because if somebody came for me coaching and like thought they were getting counseling, then there's some legal issues. So I have, and I forgot to mention that because I do all the things, like in March, my sister-in-law is a psychiatric nurse. And so when we moved here in October, and then we moved here this October, but before we even moved here, we opened an office together. And so that helped with, one, giving me a place, like a physical boundary, like being able to come down here and work in peace. In fact, I had to kick my husband out last night. He came down and sat on the couch and started playing TikToks. And I'm like, can you just leave? I'm like, I can't focus. There's a reason I come down here. But that helped me be able to separate, like, okay, counseling, I'll just do in person, and then coaching will be all my virtual. And that is where, like, success to me will be when I'm able to actually give up my counseling license and focus fully on virtual coaching. Because that's when I've been doing workshops. I've been doing a lot of, kind of just additional things in my coaching world. And that's where I love. Like, I'm like, I might as well just keep working on what I'm passionate about. And the counseling piece got me, set up and gave me that confidence to be able to do my coaching. So,
Well, it's all steps, right, in the right direction. And you have taken many steps in the right direction. Like I said, you have all these platforms in which you're already engaging. I have to ask because your business, obviously has been in place pre-COVID.
yeah.
What are the challenges that you have faced, after COVID or through COVID?
Well, one of the challenges was when we got this office, we got a three room office with one big room that my intention was to do groups. Like I'm all about like the membership is right on my alley because I'm all about like the learning of from one another and that interaction. I'm all about like women supporting women and empowering each other. And so nobody wanted to come to a group for obvious reasons, like in-person groups here in the counseling. For my coaching, COVID really didn't affect me. It just kind of gave me that opportunity to learn all of it because I started in November and then 6 months later, it, everything, the whole world shut down. And so it really just has given me this chance to learn from others who have gone before me and dive into without pressure, like without, so those are my two big like that's how COVID affected my business in a positive way, I think, in the coaching world.
Now, one of the things that I hear when I ask this question in relation to COVID is that it really has allowed folks to learn more, to dive deeper into certain subjects or activities that they weren't able to before, because now you have a different way of working, maybe a little more time on your hands if you've stopped working in one capacity or decreased those hours there. So it really has been a great learning opportunity. It has also challenged folks to be more adaptable, right? If you worked in corporate before per se, and now you're at home all the time, if you're a parent, doing homeschooling versus sending your kids off to school, there's so many things that have changed for folks, but I've heard more positives than negatives.
So it did affect us with the school. Now that you mention that, like my kids were remote learning and I was like, I can't do this. Like I can't do this. So when we were able to, we sent our younger two back to school and it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Like we loved the school. They had to go to a different school because the schools here, they were like, no, you committed to remote. So you have to stay remote the whole year. And I'm like, we can't do that. Like I can't, our relationships are like
my sanity.
I know, we can't. Like I was crying hysterical to the director of the like remote education department. I'm like, I just can't do this. I'm like, I just sounded like this crazy mom, but I was at my wit's end. I'm like, okay. So I just scraped up wiped my tears and made a decision to put them into a different school. And we haven't looked back. Like it worked out for the best. So it did affect us but the one good thing is like, that's how I was able to grow my group is because people had more time. So they were on social, they were in Facebook, my audience was there and they were like, they were bored. So like they were looking for that community. They were looking for the community. And I was like, let's get together and let's do this. Let's, and so that helped me with my virtual business for sure.
You gave me a thought just now, right? I really wonder how things are going to change and shift once we get back to more normalcy.
Yeah.
Because like you said, COVID has allowed us to shift priorities and engage in other areas that maybe weren't the way we engaged prior, like social media, making all these connections, having these groups, having a support system that is virtual. What's going to happen when our priorities shift again? Will these avenues still be as successful, still be as engaging?
It's true. Yeah. Like even I did a sleep workshop the other day, like a few weeks ago. I did it virtual through Zoom and it was all about like, I had done a training for my counseling for continuing ed, all about like using cognitive behavioral therapy for sleep and to improve your sleep. And so I developed that into a workshop that I can do, like that was specific for moms and that weren't for sleep disorders. Like I just adapted it and did it virtual. And then my sister-in-law, who's I'm working with in person, she's like, why don't you do that here? Like, well, I created a whole workbook and everything. And she's like, we'll advertise just to our clients and say,
Mm-hmm.
because it's here, it's already developed. But I'm like that, I am absolutely fine with that as the world opens up again and people are more comfortable being at in-person events. You're in California, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so Montana, they're a lot, I know they're a lot more lenient and they're more like we've got I don't know, like they're not so many people are wearing masks. We're like, come on, like we're still wearing masks and everything, but not everybody shares that same mindset. And so
Mm-hmm.
people are more willing to come out, like even our clients and stuff. And so that will only help me in my coaching business to be able to, the more I present and the more I get comfortable doing what I'm doing, I can better serve the women who I want to serve
Mm-hmm.
more, like the women I want to serve right in my group and everything. So
Yes. And what's great about that too is that, like you said, especially if you had a brick and mortar business before where it was more face to face, you now discovered this other avenue, this other way to engage with your clients, right?
serve.
With the remote. And that doesn't mean that that will end. It's still going to be there, right? It's just that now we're going to incorporate more of the face to face interaction, face to face engagement. Um, for me though, it was more like you, where my business, was more face to face, more interaction, and social media wasn't really a thing that I focused on. But the pandemic has forced that change, had forced that adaptability on my end, and I'm just like, oh, it's a lot of work. Like, don't get me wrong, I love what I do,
Get it,
but
it is.
it's a lot of work. Like showing up on the various platforms, creating the content. And then on top of that, you have your actual coaching, the actual work you do with clients, individually, groups, your collaborations. Like, it's quite a lot.
It is. A few weeks, about maybe 2 months ago, I got like sidetracked and I was like, okay, I need to get a scheduler. Like I felt like I wasn't showing up on Instagram enough. And I'm on all of the social platforms, but it's Facebook is like, I can't be distracted by like trying to, and I do post stories on, but it takes me a while to create them on Canva and like do them pretty and like all that stuff. I mean, so I did hire my 17-year-old and she schedules my posts and everything. So I got her
Oh, that's
involved.
so
I have
great.
my 14-year-old son. I got him on board. He's been editing my videos to put on the blog. So I have like branched out and I'm paying them and stuff because
Mm-hmm.
they're always, Mom, can I have money? Like,
Not
so I'm
for
like,
free, Mom.
here's some work to do. So I got really like distracted, like, oh, I got to be posting in all these places and all this thing. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I need to just
Mm-hmm.
reel it back in. And because you're absolutely right. It is so much work to be posting
Mm-hmm.
on every, I'll send it, I'll tweet. And I'm doing a Clubhouse moderator thing with a group of girls. I'm like, okay, once a week, 30 minutes. Like, that's what I'm doing. Because it is, you have like your other work that's going to propel you forward. And
Mm-hmm.
social's nice, but it can get overwhelming for sure.
Yes. And I feel like most folks have like their main platform, and then from their main platform they will disseminate like information to other platforms. But it's difficult when you see certain folks who are like, no, you have to, the more platforms you're on and the more you post, the more chance that, and so you feel this pressure to be present everywhere.
Everywhere. So did you ever hear of John Lee Dumas? He just wrote a book and he's a podcaster. He does Entrepreneurs on Fire. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been listening to him and he just wrote a book and it is The Common Path to Uncommon Success. And I just read it. It's amazing. But one of the things that his key points is don't like to convert the converted. And this is when I like reel it back in and I'm like, I am doing all these other things, but like I want my moms to join, like I want women to join my Facebook group because that's where I'm showing up. And
Mm-hmm.
so while I'm on like Twitter and Instagram and like doing all these other social media, and I'm like, I don't even know, half of the people that are following me on Instagram are actually other coaches, like that might not even be necessarily moms. And I'm like, they might not even be on Facebook. And yet I'm like showing up on Instagram, like using my time to show up on Instagram. Whereas that's not where I am. I'm in Facebook. So I'm like, I need to like get into other groups and start serving the moms there and being like, look, this is where I am, instead of like trying, again, keeping those blinders on and not getting distracted by all of the things that we could be doing. And
that's a good point. And I have also seen that, right, where you do want to shift your focus to the area where you will be able to show up consistently, authentically, where it has the value that you want to put out there, the message you want to put out there, and has the alignment as well. So it's important. For those of you that are listening or watching, it's important. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur or are an entrepreneur already, to understand where and when and how you can engage.
yeah, that is key. Because then
So,
you just
Onnie,
are using your time all over the place, and you could be using that time to practice self-care.
yes, exactly. You want to prioritize, especially, depending on the role that you play, which we play multiple roles, right? Mother, wife, sister, and what have you, entrepreneur, CEO. If you're a solopreneur, you are everything for your company until you blow up and can hire people.
Or hire your kids.
Or hire your kids. Man, if I had some kids around here, but like, hey, you do my social media.
Come on, you've got nieces and nephews. Get them to work, Evelyn.
I know, but they're not in the same state, unfortunately.
They could be your VA.
My virtual assistant, yeah. So, Onnie, we got to learn a little bit about, your transition, what got you to do what you do, your credentials, the various places where you engage and show up, and your offerings. Is there any last thought or message you want to share with the audience?
I think we all have, if especially those ones that are aspiring, like coaches and entrepreneurs, like you have lessons to teach. You have stories inside you and content that would be amazing and would definitely help other people. Like I said about how I had to do some business coaching myself in order to get that confidence. It took me like 1 week and I was like, I can do this. Like get out there and meet other coaches and meet other women. And I'm all about collaboration rather than competition. And I find that, if you ask, you need to know what questions to ask. What do you need? And then identify that and then communicate those needs. What do you need to learn to get that confidence? And just start. I am one to just put in a stake in the ground and just go for it. Like that's the only way you're going to build that confidence.
Yes, take that step. Know what you want, go after it, and collaboration over competition.
For sure.
I love that. Right? We're an empowerment podcast, ladies. If you're not empowering each other, what are you doing?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Onnie, for coming on here and sharing your wisdom and letting us learn more about you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Evelyn, for having me. And it was such a great conversation. I enjoyed talking with you. You are so welcome.
It was indeed a great conversation. And, for those of you listening and watching, I hope that you really take this and you really absorb the various tidbits of wisdom and apply it in some way to your life. All right, guys. So as I always say, preparation, accountability, execution, and resolve are keys to your success. Until next time.
Bye.